Story where they actually have someone on who talks about the fact that Contagion, and then the movie from the 90s, I think it's called Outbreak, something like this. Those two movies have contributed to the hysteria and fear factor in you know, the swine flu and the
what a
just the idea of a pandemic. And they, you know, go into, you know, the reason behind it is because, you know, it's something that can't be controlled. And I think that that is one of the things that they really try to drill home in this movie. You know, for instance, they talk about, you know, the average person touches their face 2,000 to 3,000 times a day. Oh no. And, you know, one of the things that they do at the beginning to really, you know, to kind of hammer the point home is each person that gets sick, you know, that we see come into getting infected with this virus, they then show, or right before they show that person, they'll show Hong Kong, this many million people. And it's just like, oh no, there's so many people and so many germs. It could just spread out like wildfire from there. And, you know, it just really kind of nails the point home that, hey, you have no control of this. And if you live near one of these population areas and this starts, you're done.
Yeah, I noticed that too. To be honest, I think that this started out very effectively. I think that the opening part of the first act of this movie was very, very effective. And if it had maintained the sort of emotional drama that it had in that first part, I think it could have been much more effective. And I'm not trying to tell these filmmakers how to be better propagandists, but I'm glad they're not. But I'm going to admit that I was quite affected by that part, that opening. I don't know what it was, 10, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it was. Yeah. Seeing the spread of the virus, and then when it takes the main character's wife and son, a very emotional, you know, scene, and myself as a father trying to think about that happening to my wife and son. Oh, you know, that's horrible. So it was very effective in that way. And one thing that stood out to me, just from a technical perspective, is that I never, ever, ever in my life have ever noticed color grading in a movie, and yet I noticed the color grading in these scenes. They were extremely. They were just extreme. They were either very, very blue kind of colors, or they were extremely bright and kind of vivacious. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. Orangey, yeah, exactly. Orangey. Like, yeah, blue and orange, which are very contrasty colors, and that they love to use in these types of mind control films, if people look into that. But I noticed that very much, and it was a very stylized kind of look. And now that I think about it, now that I realize and connect this with Syriana, the other Soderbergh movie that we've looked at, it has a similar sort of slick look to it. But I thought that was all very effective from the propagandistic side of things, but as it develops, as the movie goes forward, it turns into this very procedural kind of drama, and it's very clinical. It kind of examines it from, I mean, you get glimpses of the sort of the breakdown of society, and you certainly see a lot of like images of garbage on the streets and fires burning in various places and people looting things. You get that kind of view, but you never actually really feel it. So you don't really, I mean, you're not really emotionally invested in what happens in this movie, and it just, I think you're right, there's this detachment that makes it a pretty ineffective piece of propaganda in a lot of ways. I mean, it shows you sort of the process of what goes on or what could go on in an epidemic, but it doesn't really make you connect with it, which is, I think, the big failure. But as I say, I'm glad it fails to connect on that regard, unless you had a different take on the way that it plays out.
No, I think that you actually nailed it perfectly, and I think having just seen it for the first time, you can, I think, more easily remember that first 20 minutes, and I forgot how emotional it is for Matt Damon's character to lose his wife and son, and then it just starts off and you're like, oh no, what is going to happen? This movie could go anywhere. They're already, killing off these main characters, and this is just, I can't imagine what that feels like. And then you're right, it does take I would agree, it was a good synopsis. It gets very clinical, and then it's almost, like a predictive programming, where after the main character loses his life, it shows you, okay, or his wife loses her life, it shows you, okay, now this is what's going to happen, okay, and the military is going to be the one that enforces the quarantine, the military is going to be the one that threatens detainment, the news is going to know what's going on the whole time, and the CDC is going to be fighting to figure this out, and whatnot. But it's funny that even in their clinical drawing out of the story, they still had room to slide in a few other things. For instance, we haven't even talked about Jude Law's character.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to talk about this character very, very much. Okay, so for just to refresh everyone's memory, of course, we're talking about Alan Krumweid. I'm reading this. I don't remember.
What a terrible name. You're already supposed to not like it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Krumweid. Yeah, it doesn't sound like someone you're supposed to have.
He's
warm,
a
fuzzy
crummy
feelings about.
character.
So, reading from the Wikipedia synopsis, which is going off of the notes, production notes that were provided with this film.